speaker to talk on the trends in seafarers' welfare, its value to seafarers' families. We'd like to welcome the Director of DM Consulting and representative of International Committee on Seafarers' Welfare and International Seafarers Assistance Network, Mr. David Dearsley.
Well, thank you very much. It's a tremendous pleasure. It's all right, you can keep it down there, I'll just tremendous pleasure to be here to speak at the first Families Convention. It's also, might I say, particularly intimidating at the moment. I've never before done the last speech on the last day on a Friday as well. And now realising that I'm the only thing standing between you and your weekend. But I have promised that I will not speak for longer than 3 hours, so that should be good. And it'll be in English as well. Trends in seafarers' welfare is what I'm here to talk about. And the news is there's some good bits and there's some not so good bits. And in fact, there's some pretty bad bits. So there's a bit of serious in what I'm going to be saying. This is vanity. I should put my glasses on. Certainly won't take more than 3 hours. That's the sort of things I'm going to be talking about. Say a little bit about the two organisations that I'm speaking on behalf of, ICAN and ICSW. Something about, as it's a trend, I've got to start where we used to be. So I can tell you the way things are starting to move. We heard this morning, yes, there's been a tremendous impact for seafarers, most good on the shortage. There's another thing which I've got up there, which is a little bit of academic stuff, Maslow and corporate social responsibility, but it's quite good underpinning for the way things are going. Then I'll tell you some of the things that we're doing, a bit about piracy, helpline, and some of the latest initiatives we're taking on improved communication. First then, a little bit about ICSW and ISAN. The International Committee on Seafarers' Welfare is unique in that it brings together employers, organisations and workers' organisations with welfare providers. So the acronyms up on the screen. You've got International Transport Workers Federation, International Shipping Federation, employers. ICMAR is the International Christian Maritime Association, which brings in the Apostles of the Sea, the Missions to Seamen, the Sailors Party, all the other organisations that are faith-based organisations. And we also have government seamen services, particularly from the Scandinavian, Norwegian and Denmark, Sweden, Finland. Between them, they operate over 600 port seafarers centres. If you've been around the exhibition out there, and I hope if you haven't, you've still got time to go, we've put a replica of a seaman centre. In fact, it's on a seafarer centre in Hamburg. Pictures of like real seafarers, and people keep wandering the exhibition and say, "Can I buy a drink?" You know what it is. It's not that authentic, I'm afraid. But there's a lot of our workers who also visit ships. There's a lot of the ship visitors are there, and they go on board when the seafarer can't get ashore, and they can see them SIM cards and other gear that they need on board. Other services that they provide in minibuses to run seafarers from ships to shore, because often they're too to visit anywhere. They also, in certain ports where security is so tight, they will not allow people to go from ship to shore who are not certified as safe. They're not terrorists, but they can go under escort. So, unbelievably, our workers in the seafarers centres exist for no other purpose than to escort seafarers ashore. They're the only people Let me say something also about ISAN, the Seafarers Assistance Network. I'll go into a bit more detail later on this, if I may. International Seafarers Assistance Network, I'm not sure if you've heard very much about them. They provide a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year helpline service for seafarers, free of charge, and they're multilingual. We've got 2 Filipinos actually work on that. One of whom is here. Chester is operating the stall in the exhibition centre. They deal with, or last year they dealt with 3,000 seafarers who contacted them for help, which about 40%, 1,200 or so, were Filipinos. And here, let me just go back into what I said. Need a bit of serious stuff, thinking about the weekend coming. That's 1,200 or so of your seafarer nationals who actually need to ring us or contact us for help because there was no one else to help. The trouble is, with, I'm afraid, I've been to so many maritime conventions and conferences over the years, one group of people who never come. It's the substandard employers, they're never here. There's wives clubs, the people who phone ISAN don't have wives clubs. We heard from ISM this morning about pensions and medical schemes. The people who phone ISAN don't have these things. There's a dark underside of the industry which needs more help, and that's what ISAN is there to offer to them. Bad news. Let me move on to what I call traditional welfare provision. These things, we used to have ports in city centres, we used to have much longer days. We had libraries on board, we all read books in those days. We had social areas to mix. On the ships I was on, in fact I did Pakistani, Hong Kong Chinese, South African Zulus and British crew. But I thought, well, I'll probably not do this speaking Hindi. Because we it's not the other way around. But we had a crew about of which we had 18 British. We had our own football team, would you believe it? We sat around and sung in the social areas. We could come off watch at 4 o'clock in the morning and still smoke with and chat. So it was a different world. This thing called a radio officer, I think there was an ex-radio officer in the room, so I better not be too rude. But the reason I mention it is simply that communications is an individual thing. You all have your smartphones. Nowadays, we had a radio officer, and his job was to deal with the shipboard communication. Can you send a message off to me, Mum? It's her birthday. He existed for ships' commercial traffic, but ships were more or less because they had to be. We had, in those days, national social support system. Medical attention when you were at home because they didn't have to think about a pension because you had a state pension. Our had been employed. I mean, some of the crew would come up to me and say, "My dad used to work for your company." We had systems in place because we'd been there for generations. That we heard about earlier. So all those systems we have to think about. And I say here there was. What I mean is, as individuals, we didn't have to be that clever or that confident, because there were so many of us. It was very difficult to make a mistake. Someone was always going to be able to pop up and say, "Oh, no, I don't think you want to be doing that." So it was much easier in those days. We didn't have to struggle on an individual level to get things right. We go on to what I've described here as the welfare. Short port stays. Ports are in remote areas. Small crews. They're mixed nationality. I talked to some cadets who, I've got to say, I was supposed always they were a credit to themselves, a credit to their families, a credit to the company. But I said to them, would you ever go to the Seaman Centre if you what do you go to the Seaman Centre for? Oh, to speak Tagalog. I mean, that's what they were going for, and of course to use get it. The one above that is called. That's where you need to have relationships. That's where things like your family clubs, wives clubs come in, because that's a level again above the basic physical needs. Moving up, you've got things like, I want to work for a decent company. I don't want to work for a rust bucket company. So that's where you actually, he says, who do you work for? And you say, oh, I work for OSM. They'll go, oh, that's good. Because it gives them, reflects on them as well. And finally, that you need a challenge as well. You don't like to think, oh, this is boring. There's a bit of a challenge in your job. So that was the reason I like quoting go academically, that we're not just in it for the money, there's more than money. So let me tell you a few of the things that we're doing as backup support to the companies. Last year, as I know many of you know, because they've come up and told me the year of the Seafarer, we had families plus their kids in Lunetta Park. Everything was free. Games, face painting for the kids, story reading. We had competition, dancing for the cadets, loads and loads of giveaways. First one of its kind in the world. It hasn't been done before. And that was an initiative by ICSW. Published a crew communications piece of research, which check on our website, you can pick up the results, but it's fascinating. Last year, I went with a team from ICSW to visit the International Ports and Harbours Association. This is a big international organisation based in Tokyo. Ports and harbours are members of it. And they said, oh, yes, we'll meet you, and that was very nice. And we said, well, we provide port welfare services for seafarers, and we'd like to have a relationship with you because certain ports don't have these sectors. And they said, well, we quite really thought about seafarers. I mean, we deal with ships. We said, yeah, but that's where the seafarers are on the ships. And they said, well, that's an interesting concept that we haven't really thought about. And that's typical, that they think ship, commercial, technical, they don't think about the human.